The scorching New Mexico sun bore down on Reed Malloy's dust-covered hat as he cast his line into the deceptively calm waters of Creek's Bend River. Beneath the glassy surface, hidden currents whispered of danger. Reed welcomed this quiet stretch of river far from prying eyes and loaded questions. At 27, the cowboy found more comfort in solitude than in conversation. His roughened hands, toughened by years of labor, trembled faintly as he reached for the flask tucked deep in his saddlebag. Just a small swig to hushed the echoes of Gettysburg that still clawed at his sleep, the screams of dying men, the acrid tang of blood and gunpowder, the ache of a letter from his brother Tommy that he had never managed to deliver to ashamed. To Broken Dot the red bandana knotted around his neck, the last thing his mother had given him before the sickness took her, soaked up the sweat on his skin. He shifted his seat on the rocky bank, remembering how he'd learned to swim here, in these very waters. That had been after Tommy's death, driven by a guilt heavier than any musket shot. If he'd only been there that day, if he'd only taught Tommy to swim better, if only. A scream cut through the silence like a blade. Reed snapped his head up. Across the water, near the Lakota camp, a small child flailed in the current. Before he could react, a woman dove in after the child, her figure lean, her long black hair streaming behind her. Reed's heart thudded as he watched her struggle through the rapids, finally pushing the child toward the shallows. But the effort drained her, and the river took its due. Her body vanished beneath the surface just as the child was pulled to safety. Without a second thought, Reed stripped off his boots and dove into the river. His strokes were powerful, practiced. He'd swum these currents many times, knew their tricks and moods. The cold water bit at his skin as he searched. Then there a flash of beaded leather trapped between rocks. He lunged forward, grabbing hold of the woman's lifeless form. Her face was calm in unconsciousness, lips parted, eyes closed. High cheekbones and graceful features told him everything and nothing. He broke the surface with her in his arms, dragging her to a shallower edge where he could stand. Her skin was cold, her lips tinged blue. No breath met his cheek. Panic surged through him. Not again. Not another soul lost while he stood helpless. He leaned close, tilting her head back, breathing into her lungs. Once, again, still nothing. But then there a faint beat beneath his ear. He pushed harder, refusing to stop, letting his army medic instincts guide him. He pressed and breathed and prayed. At last, she coughed violently, water pouring from her mouth. Her eyes opened slowly, dark, liquid brown, confused, grateful. "You're all right," Reed murmured, cradling her gently. "You're safe now." "The child," she whispered hoarsely. Searching for signs of life, Reed followed her gaze and saw tribal members huddled around the bundled child on the far bank. The boy was alive, but all eyes now focused on Reed and the woman in the water. She was Nalee Skyhawk, daughter of Chief Chaza. In her 23 years, no one had ever looked at her the way this strange cowboy did, like she mattered beyond her title. He had pulled her from the river and in the traditions of her people. That created a bond not easily broken. As she leaned on him to stand, soaked and gasping, she felt something new, seen not as an obligation, not as a curiosity, but as a woman worth saving. Neither of them noticed the cold eyes watching from the distance. Sheriff Eno Duffy lowered his spyglass with a scowl. The fool had just invited trouble. That night, Reed lay awake in Silver Creek's cramped boarding house, his flask empty, his thoughts wide awake. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face in the water, calm, haunting, alive, not with fear, but with something deeper. He had saved her just as he couldn't save Tommy. That bitter irony clung to his tongue like stale liquor. At dawn, he found himself behind Murphy's general store, tending to a lame mare for a few dollars. The job wasn't glamorous, but it kept him in town and away from questions until now. "You went for a swim yesterday," Murphy said, stepping outside with a disapproving look. "With one of them Lakota girls." Reed's hands paused on the mare's leg. "Saved her life, that's all." Murphy's voice dropped lower. "Sheriff don't see it that way. He's been sniffing around, asking about you. Says a man with no family, no real name, no roots, makes folks nervous." The warning hung thick in the air. Reed had crossed paths with Duffy twice enough to know the sheriff didn't enforce laws so much as he enforced fear. He was the kind of man who wielded his badge like a weapon. "I keep to myself," Reed replied cautiously. "Not anymore, you don't," Murphy said, glancing toward the rising smoke from the Lakota camp. "That girl, she's been a skin. After you. That's Chief Chaz's daughter you dragged out of the river." Reed's stomach knotted. He hadn't wanted attention. He'd come to Silver Creek to vanish, to let the world forget him. But fate didn't care about his plans. Just like the river, it pulled in its own direction. Across the river, Nellie sat quietly in her father's lodge. Her thoughts were turbulent, her breath still remembering the cold grip of the current. As always, she had risen before the sun, to sing the old songs passed down from her mother. But now, her voice trembled with something new, something she couldn't name. Not fear, not pain. Something that had begun in the arms of a weathered cowboy and wouldn't be silenced. Their souls had touched in a way neither of them could explain. But today, as Nellie recited the old prayers, her voice trembled. The image of the cowboy, his quiet strength, his weary eyes filled with sorrow lingered in her mind. It wasn't just gratitude for being saved. It was something deeper, something her teachings couldn't put into words. When he'd breathed air back into her lungs, it had been more than a rescue. She had felt a force greater than herself, a connection that defied logic or language. "You are unsettled, my daughter," Chief Chaska said, his voice as steady as ever, though his steps had grown slower, his posture more fragile with time. Nellie hesitated before speaking. "The man who rescued me yesterday." She paused again. How could she explain the unshakable belief that had taken root inside her, that this man had been placed in her path by something greater, that his rival wasn't chance, it was destiny? She thought of his scarred face, the way his eyes held secrets and pain. "I believe the spirits sent him to guide me." Her father didn't interrupt. He watched her carefully, his cloudy eyes showing only the faintest flicker of surprise. "I saw it clearly," she said, more firmly now. "He pulled me from the spirit realm. Our fates are bound." Chaska finally spoke. "If this is true, our tradition is clear. You would choose him as husband." It wasn't a question. He had once seen that same certainty in the eyes of his late wife, when she had chosen him at just 17. Nellie nodded slowly. "The spirits have shown me," she said. "And if he turns away from me, if his people reject this, then so be it. I will know the truth. The old ways require that I ask." Back in town, Hannah Miller arranged her classroom, placing slates and readers neatly in rows. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Gossip traveled fast in Silver Creek, and she'd heard about what Reed had done before breakfast had finished. Cooking, she'd admired him since the day he arrived, quiet, respectful, always standing at the edge of the crowd. He never spoke about his past, never stayed anywhere long. He was a man carrying something heavy inside. Now that weight had taken a new form in the gratitude of a Lakota woman. Hannah had been in Silver Creek long enough to know what such a connection could mean. It wasn't just about love or rescue. It was politics, it was land, it was race, and it was dangerous. She watched him from her window, gently cleaning a horse's wound with the same careful touch he'd used with the Lakota woman. It hurt her to see it, even though he wasn't hers. She had hoped foolishly that maybe he would settle, maybe he would choose her. But now, outside, the town baked in the rising heat. Sheriff Duffy passed the schoolhouse twice that morning, always glancing toward the river. His fingers never strayed far from his holster. The air felt thick with something unspoken, and everyone sensed it. By midday, the stories had grown wild. By evening, they would reach the ears of men who didn't care for peace. Reed Malloy, in saving one woman, might have unknowingly endangered an entire town. But for now, three hearts, Nellie's, Hannah's, and Reed's, faced the same truth. Some choices, once made, could never be undone. Reed was working on a stubborn horse, Murphy's gelding. When they arrived, three Lakota riders appeared like ghosts, their painted faces solemn, their horses adorned for ceremony. The lead figure dismounted with purpose. She moved with grace, wearing a traditional dress that shimmered in the sunlight, her hair braided with turquoise. Nellie Skyhawk. She walked through the center of Silver Creek, straight toward him, the Townsfolk falling silent as they turned to watch, Reed stopped mid-swing, the hammer in his hand suddenly too heavy. He knew those eyes instantly. They'd haunted his dreams since the river. "Reed Malloy," she said, her voice clear and firm, rising above the murmurs. The horse beside him pawed nervously at the ground as the tension thickened. Reed set his tools down, removed his hat, and stepped forward. Sheriff Duffy had emerged from his office, eyes sharp, hand hovering near his gun. "Yes, ma'am," Reed answered, voice steady despite the pressure tightening in his chest. The red scarf at his neck felt more like a shackle than a choice. "I am Nalee, daughter of Chief Chaska of the Lakota," she said. Her tone was formal, each word laced with meaning. Round them, the townspeople exchanged glances, whispers. Already starting, Reed looked at her, truly looked, and felt something shift deep inside. Whatever came next, violence, judgment, sacrifice, he couldn't walk away from this moment, not now. Step back. Her voice was firm but calm, eyes locked onto his. "Yesterday, you pulled me from the waters and breathed life back into my body." Reed's mouth went dry. He could feel Murphy's scowl from the general store doorway and knew, without turning, that Hannah Miller was watching from her classroom window. Heartbreak etched across her face. "I just did what anyone would have done," he muttered. "No," Nalee said, unwavering. "You made a choice, and the spirits saw it. In our belief, when a man saves a woman from drowning, their souls become tied. The water spirits have marked you. You are now my guardian, my protector." Gasps rippled through the growing crowd. Sheriff Duffy's face darkened, his jaw clenched with disapproval. Reed felt as if the earth beneath him had begun to pitch and sway, like the deck of a ship in rough seas. "Mum, I respect what you're saying, but I don't," Nalee cut him off, standing tall and unafraid. "I claim you, before all who witnessed this of your people and mine. I choose Reed Malloy to stand beside me, as my partner, as my husband." A stunned hush fell over the onlookers. Reed looked at her, this fierce, beautiful woman who had just broken every social rule of Silver Creek with a single declaration. His thoughts spun. What she had just done could change everything for both of them. The danger, the judgment, the weight of it all pressed down. But underneath the fear was something else. How long had it been since anyone had chosen him, not out of necessity, but out of faith? When had someone looked beyond his calloused hands, his wandering life, and seen something worth holding onto? "Miss," Sheriff Duffy's voice cracked the silence. "I don't know what heathen rituals your kind follows, but decent folk don't make decisions this way." Nalee didn't blink. "Your government signed agreements with my father. According to those treaties, our marriage customs are legally recognized here." "Marriage?" Duffy barked a harsh laugh. "You expect people to accept this? A white man tied to an Indian girl." Reed's blood flared hot. He stepped forward, putting his body between her and the sheriff. "Mind your words." Duffy's hand drifted toward the revolver on his hip. "What now? You taking sides with these savages?" I said. "Watch it," Reed growled. "You're not wanted here, Malloy," Duffy sneered. "Pack up, be gone by nightfall." Nalee didn't move. Her voice rang out with quiet strength. "He won't go anywhere until he answers me." She turned back to Reed. "Will you take me as your wife, by the customs of both our people? Will you stand with me against those who would tear us apart?" Reed's breath caught in his throat. He thought of Tommy, the boy he couldn't save, of all the chances he never took, of the bottle waiting back in his room, and the ache that followed him wherever he went. But then he looked at her, this woman offering him something different. Not pity, not rescue. Something like belonging, something like hope. He spoke her name softly, as though he were trying it for the first time. "Nalee, I'm no good man. I drink too much. I've got demons I can't outrun. I drift from town to town because I've got nothing to offer, and I am a woman torn between two cultures." She replied, not missing a beat. "I care for children with no families while carrying loneliness in my chest. Like a stone, maybe you're maybe broken. People can mend better together." The truth of it struck Reed like a blow. The crowd stirred uncomfortably. Sheriff Duffy looked ready to burst. Reed swallowed hard. "I've got nothing, just the life I nearly gave to save yours. And that," Nalee whispered, "is enough." His fingers went to the red bandana At his neck the last thing of his mother's he still carried. Slowly, deliberately, he removed it and tied it gently around her throat. I guess that makes us engaged. Chaos broke loose in the crowd. Voices rose in anger, confusion, shock, but Reed barely heard them. All his focus was on the woman before him, the one who had just rewritten his future with a single act of faith. Sheriff Duffy's roar rose. Above, the clamor, "I'll put an end to this myself if I have to later." As the sun dipped low and fire painted the New Mexico sky, the Lakota camp hosted a rare and tense meeting. The sacred circle was surrounded by elders, townsfolk, and those who had come to see what could not be undone. Reed sat beside Nalee, her fingers lightly touching the red cloth tied around her neck. For the first time in years, his hands didn't shake. Across from them, Sheriff Duffy stood flanked by armed men, their expressions hard and unyielding. Chief Chaza, Nalee's father, rose with quiet dignity, though age clouded his eyes. His voice rang with clarity. "My daughter has spoken under the laws of our ancestors. The spirits chose this man when he gave her breath from his own lungs. We will honor that honor." Duffy scoffed. "This is about a girl trying to pass herself off as legitimate by snagging a white drifter. I won't allow this filth in my town." Reed felt Nalee's back stiffen beside him, but her face remained composed. She stood slowly, proud, defiant, unafraid. Her dress shimmered in the fading light. She didn't need to say a word. Her presence spoke louder than any defense, and Reed knew no matter what storm came next he would not run. Not anymore. The flames crackled as she stepped into the circle, her voice calm, but sharp like a blade. "Sheriff Duffy speaks as though love is bound by the color of our skin," she said, her English crisp and measured. "Yet I was raised in your schools, baptized in your churches, taught to read your books and speak your tongue. When it suits you, I am one of you. But when it challenges your comfort, I suddenly become the other." A wave of discomfort rippled through the gathered townspeople, her words cutting deep into unspoken truths. "You want to know why I chose this man?" Nalee asked, her tone rising with fierce emotion. "Not because of his skin. Because when death tried to take me, he fought to bring me back. Because when I was drowning, he jumped in, not to be a hero, but because something inside him couldn't let me go. I saw in his eyes the same emptiness I've carried since losing my mother." Reed rose to stand beside her, his presence drawing a ripple of unease from the sheriff's deputies. "She's right," he said, his voice steady. "That emptiness. She saw I've carried it with me since the war. I came here trying to lose myself in drink. In silence, thought maybe if I disappeared, the ghosts would leave me be. But yesterday, when I pulled her out of that river, something shifted. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was meant to protect something, to hold on." "Nice speech," Duffy sneered. "But this ain't about your personal healing. It's about keeping order. What happens if every drifter thinks he can shack up with an Indian girl? You think the good people of Silver Creek will let that stand?" A new voice cut through the tension. "I am one of those people," said Hannah Miller, stepping forward, her cheeks wet but her back straight. "And I believe love deserves honor, not punishment." Her eyes locked with Reed's, filled with hurt, but also something soft resolve. "Reed Malloy is a good man. If Miss Nalee brings him peace, she has my blessing." Her words seemed to spark courage in others. Dr. Morrison, the town's physician, stepped forward. "I've seen how Nalee tends to the children of her people, gentle, patient, kind. Any man would be lucky to call her his wife." But Duffy's scowl only deepened. "I've had enough," he growled, waving his men into formation. "Malloy, you've got 60 seconds to walk away from this disgrace, or I'll have you arrested for inciting unrest." "On what grounds?" Chief Chaza asked from the shadows, his voice low and dangerous, disturbing the peace stirring up racial tension. "Take your pick," Duffy snapped, his hand resting near his holster. "The governor won't stand for any talk of rebellion, and that's where this is heading." Reed felt the familiar edge of fear press in, the kind that once froze him on the battlefield. But something inside him had shifted. He thought of Tommy's letter tucked away in his saddlebag. Never sent. All the silence, all the regret. No, More, if you want to put me in chains for choosing love over fear, then go ahead, Reed said, stepping closer until he was almost nose to nose with the sheriff. I'm done running. Done believing I'm beyond saving. She saw something in me I forgot was there, and I won't let you or your hatred destroy that. Reed, don't, Nalee murmured, but her voice held no fear, only pride. I've carried guilt like a second skin, Reed continued, turning to the crowd. I thought I didn't deserve happiness, but she believed in me. She chose me, and I'm choosing her, no matter the cost. Duffy's pistol cleared its holster in one fluid motion. The barrel aimed straight at Reed's chest. This is your final warning. Silence fell over the gathering like a shroud. Reed didn't move. His eyes held fast to the sheriff's, unblinking, unwavering. Behind him, Nalee began to sing, a soft Lakota melody rising like smoke. Her voice was steady, sacred, filling the night air with ancient strength. A second voice joined Hannah's, hesitant at first, then strong, and then others followed, one by one, voices weaving together in quiet defiance, surrounding Reed and Nalee in a wall of sound and solidarity. ***. The melody drifted softly at first, familiar in its simplicity. Nalee recognized it. It was one her students often hummed. Dr. Morrison joined in, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. One by one, others lent their voices to the wordless song, until it wrapped around the gathering like a protective cloak. Sheriff Duffy's grip on his pistol faltered, his stance unsure. Even his deputies exchanged hesitant glances, visibly shaken by the display of unity. Then Chief Cheska stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. Sheriff Duffy, you threatened to spill blood in a sacred place, over a bond forged in love. The treaties your government signed grant us the right to our traditions. Are you truly prepared to shatter them over this marriage? Duffy's eyes burned with anger, but he lowered his weapon. This isn't the end, he hissed. Mark my words, this union will only bring ruin to this town. With that, he turned and stalked away, his men silently following. Reed turned to Nalee, who stood bathed in firelight, the red bandana round her neck glowing like a badge of defiance. Her eyes held both relief and an unshakable resolve. Are you ready for what's ahead? She asked softly. Reed thought of the road ahead, the hostility, the impossibility of fully blending two worlds, the fact that goodwill wouldn't be enough to fix everything. But he also thought of the moment she looked into him, not past his scars, but through them, and saw a man worth standing beside. With you, he said, taking her hands in his, I'm ready for whatever comes. The circle round them erupted in cautious celebration, as Chief Cheska prepared to perform the sacred rites, but none of them noticed the figure lurking in the shadows. Sheriff Duffy, face twisted in fury, already reaching for the telegraph that would call in reinforcements from the territorial capital. 3 weeks after the ceremony that united Reed Malloy and Nalee Skyhawk in both Lakota and Christian tradition, Silver Creek stood precariously balanced at a point of no return. The governor had responded swiftly to Duffy's message. Troops were en route to restore order and prevent the imagined threat of an uprising. Outside the modest cabin Reed and Nalee had built between tribal and town land, Reed sat watching as his wife gently taught a group of orphan children how to care for the shared garden. Her laughter blended seamlessly with the language lessons she offered, switching between English and Lakota with ease. The red bandana she still wore had faded, but its meaning remained undiminished. She's wonderful with them, said Hannah Miller, arriving with a heavy basket of books and supplies. She had become a vital ally, helping Nalee navigate the intricacies of Silver Creek society while also tutoring the Lakota children. She raised most of them after the cholera, Reed replied, taking the basket from her. Lost her own mother during that outbreak. Still didn't stop her from caring for every child left behind. Hannah studied his face, noticing the clarity that had replaced the shadows of old grief. 3 weeks sober, with purpose in his days. Reed still bore his pain, but it no longer defined him. I heard about the governor's response, Hannah said gently. How are you really holding up? Reed's jaw tightened. We always knew this could happen. Duffy made sure of it. He pointed toward the distant horizon, where a faint trail of dust signaled the nearing arrival of troops. The question is whether we run or stay. Before she could answer, The pounding of hooves interrupted them. But it wasn't soldiers who rode up, it was Chief Chaza, joined by Dr. Morrison and several townsfolk. Their faces bore grim news. They arrived. An hour ago, Morrison reported. 20 men, led by Captain Bradley. They've camped east of town and demanded a council meeting at sunset with all tribal leaders, and those they consider responsible for the unrest. Chief Chaza climbed down from his horse with difficulty, his growing blindness evident in his movements. They want to end this before it spreads, Morrison added. The governor believes your marriage threatens the stability of the whole territory. If Chief Cheska refuses to renounce it, there's talk of relocating the tribe entirely. The words struck like a blow. Reed had expected pushback, but not this level of retaliation. Entire families punished over a personal choice. They've done it before, Chaza murmured. Forced marches, broken promises. My people have suffered enough. Then we end the marriage. Reed said abruptly, his voice hollow. I won't let your people pay the price for our love. No, Nali said firmly, her voice echoing like a drumbeat. We chose this. We always knew the cost. She's right, said Dr. Morrison, surprising them all. If we back down now, where does it end? Today they come for your marriage. Tomorrow it'll be trade. Then language. Then dignity. Some lines must never be crossed. More people began to gather Murphy from the store, ranchers who'd come to trust Lakota honesty. Even a few of Duffy's deputies who had grown uneasy with their leader's hateful rhetoric. But just as noticeable were those who did not come. Doors remained closed, windows shuttered. Many townsfolk waited in silence, unwilling to choose a side until the outcome was clear. What about the children? Hannah asked, voice trembling. What if things turn violent? They won't, Nali said, calm and unwavering. Not if we act with clarity. She addressed the growing crowd, her presence commanding despite her simple dress. Captain Bradley is a soldier. Soldiers understand duty. We give him an option that preserves his orders and his conscience. What option? Reed asked, though he already sensed where she was heading. We leave, Nali explained, not as defeated people, but by our own will. Let him report that order was maintained without bloodshed. Let the governor feel victorious while we keep our dignity. Chief Cheska's face softened, a bittersweet mix of sorrow and admiration. You'd abandon your home to protect us? We're not leaving in shame, Reed said. We're choosing love over land. There are places we can go, California, maybe Oregon, somewhere we can live without fear. But this is your home, Hannah cried. Home is where we make it together, Nali replied gently. We can start again anywhere, as long as we're side by side. As the sun dipped low, washing the sky in fiery shades of orange and gold, the group finalized their plan. Reed would meet Captain Bradley to offer their peaceful departure, asking only that the tribe be left in peace. Nali would say her goodbyes to the children, sending them into a future she could no longer be part of. Back at the cabin, Reed opened a weathered envelope he'd carried for years. Tommy's letter, his brother's final words. Never read. If you're reading this, the letter began. Then I didn't make it. Home, don't blame yourself. I never learned to swim because I was too proud to admit I was scared. You tried to teach me. I just wouldn't listen. You've always been the strong one, brave, giving. Don't let my death stop you from living. Find someone who sees the good in you even when you can't. Be happy, Reed. That's all I ever wanted. Tears blurred Reed's vision. He fed the letter to the fire, watching the ashes rise like a release from old grief. Are you ready? Nali asked softly. He looked at her, this fierce, kind woman who had chosen him against all odds. With you, he said, always, together. They walked toward their meeting with fate. They left behind a town unwilling to change and stepped into an uncertain future with nothing but each other. But in doing so, they discovered a truth few ever learn sometimes. Love requires everything and gives back more than you ever dared dream. In the distance, a coyote called out, not in mourning, but as if to honor two souls who had finally found their home in each other. Reed and Nali left Silver Creek behind, bound not by place, but by love, courage, and hope, proving that what you build together is far more powerful than anything you leave behind.